What's up, y'all? This is Jay Watts, and there's been a discussion many times on do 285s fit 8.5-inch wheels? And I'll be the first to tell you, they do. They fit. They don't rub. Like, you see a lot of people out there, oh man, I just put some on my car. They're perfect. They fit and everything else. They always say that when they put them on a car. Do they ever say that after they drive it, though? See, I've been driving my car for 4 days. 285 35 19s on 8.5-inch BMW M series wheels. And I'll tell you, first day, it was perfect. I drove up and down the streets and I was cruising through my neighborhood and I was like, man, this feels good. It kind of raised the car up a little bit in the back, just not much, but a little bit. I had 275 35 19s on there at first, had those on for about a year, and they roll perfect no matter what. I mean, I had them running. It was flawless.
And before I take the 275s off, I want to kind of get a good look at the profile of it. This is kind of how they sit. So I'm going to use this as my comparison for when I stick those 285s on there. So that's basically, you know, about as far as they stick out from the body, from up under the fender well and everything. So let's throw these 285s on and we'll see how they look. I got the other side jacked up, so it's putting a little distance up under there. But basically that's, you know, that's how they sit. Even from the front fender area right here, this is about as far as they fit. You know, like that. That's kind of how they sit, looking from the front area. So what I want to do is use this video as my kind of a little standard to say, okay, this is how much they stick out now. So there you go. As you can see, they stick out pretty, you know, pretty far compared to those 275s. But they're not as bad as I thought they would be. 295s definitely wouldn't fit. But those, oh, I like how they look. Like I said, and it's got a real nice footprint up under there. I wish I could find a way to get like a better picture of how the footprint goes with these things, but yeah. And it's kind of like how my front tires are. Like my front tires, you know, they're 255, so they kind of come out a little bit, kind of get around that rim a little. But that's kind of how my rears are now. My rears used to be way too far in. Those 275s were tucked in there and it wasn't good enough. But these, man, they got a real nice footprint on it. But I like the way it looks. So that's basically how it sits now.
Day 2 with the 285s. I was cruising, I decided to hit the highway. Yeah, as soon as I got down that ramp at about probably 85 miles an hour, the whole back end was doing this. It was just dancing. I had to let up off the gas. So I let up off the gas a little bit and I was like, okay, what the hell was that all about? Like, this car don't move like that. I've been driving this car forever. I mean, I bought it with 36,000 miles on it last year. I got 85,000 on it now. I know how this car drives. I was down in the 70s. It was riding normal. I'm like, okay, it's in the 70s. It's riding normal. So, you know, I punched it, took off. I mean, as soon as it hit about 80, 85, the whole back end started doing that all over again. Slowed down. Had no idea what was going on. Brought the car back home. You know, I was like, you know, I just need to do streets. So I just kept driving the streets for about a day or so. Tried my best not to hit the highway. When I did hit the highway, I kept it under 80. This is a performance car. There should be no reason why I can't go over 80 miles an hour. But I couldn't go over 80. So I kept it under 80 just to be safe. Get home. I'm doing all my research, going through. And, you know, everybody's like, you know, we don't recommend that. Even Discount Tire, when I took the tires to Discount, I had those run flats, those 275 run flats on there. And I don't like taking off run flats because the sides, you can't, you know, they're not flexible. They're run flats. They're real hard. One thing I like about the Pirelli is that it's a strong tire. Like, you cannot push this thing down. It's almost like a run flat. I got run flats on it now. So, I mean, this thing is like, it's hard to push. The Petlas, it's a very soft tire. Like, it's a very soft tire. You can squeeze it and everything. So it's going to be nice and bouncy on the road. Like I said, and this rubber, oh man, it feels so good. The rubber feels like real tight. So, like, you can really push this down like this. Whereas with the Pirelli, you can't do that. Like, it's very hard to push down. Like I said, and this tire is about, probably I would say 90%. But I mean, you cannot push this thing down for nothing. It is like, it's a really tight tire. So I said, hey, can you guys put these tires on? He was like, well, we could take the run flats off, but we ain't putting those 285s on this little 8.5-inch wheel. It's not going to work. I'm like, okay, this was not recommended. We don't want any liability for it. Now I know what they was talking about. So I think for a slow car, it might work if you just plan on doing the streets, but still, it's not safe. You probably can't maneuver and negotiate turns too well. As I'm looking at the tire, like you can see right now, my tire's tucked in. The wheels are actually tucked in, and the tire kind of like marshmallows out a little bit. I like the look, honestly. I like it. And I think it's pretty cool. It protects my rims from getting curb checked and all that. But because the wheel is straight down like this and the tire kind of mushrooms out, when you pump that tire up, I would say about 1/6 of the tire on the outside doesn't touch the ground.
As you can see, I've got a couple of contact patches. This line here, all of this dirt here is from my driveway. The really light dirt from this line here all the way over, that's from me backing up in my driveway right now. So my contact stops about right here. Now, you see this line way out here? This is when I'm actually driving and I'm on a highway, you hitting turns and everything, the weight of your car starts shifting. So as the weight shifts, that tire, the bubble of that tire kind of turns a little bit. And as that bubble is turning, that's when I'm hitting way out here. So you're going to have the weight shifting. That's just with no weight at all, just the car just going backwards. But this line right here, that's from weight shifting and all of that. So when you got tires this big, you need to have rims that can, or wheels and rims or whatever, that can pull that tire out, because it'll get that tire spread wide enough to where your contact patch is even at all times. Right now I got an uneven spot, so these tires are going to wear unevenly. These tires will not wear. As I'm going slow through the streets, hitting the regular streets and everything, I'm going to always be on that center contact patch line right here. But once I start hitting highways and all of that, and hitting them curves on the highway, that's when I start going way out here, because the weight of the car now and the flex in that tire is making that tire kind of like, not really buckle, but it's too much give. It's kind of marshmallowy, and I'll explain to you why that is.
So you're not even using that whole tire. And that's why I think the dancing is coming from. And I had them pumped to like regular. I think I was up to probably about, I don't know, maybe it was like 35, 40 PSI. I don't even remember what it was. But you couldn't, I was taking a picture of the car and I could see light from up under the edges. And I'm like, well, that's kind of different, because my 275s didn't have light up under the edges. The tire just sat on the ground. It was perfect. So that's why it didn't dance. It had contact. The edges could grab. With the 285s, because the edges of the tire weren't touching the ground, it was dancing around. It was looking for something to grab on the highway. But as long as I was going slow, the tire kind of settled a little bit. But when you hit a tire and it gets to spinning faster, it kind of like sucks in a little bit, because when you punch it, the tire kind of goes in. When it goes in, it raises up. The car kind of whoop. So it's taken off. The whole back end is like this. It can't find the ground. And I mean, it's on the inside of each tire, trying to find traction, trying to find the ground, until you get back down to in the 70s. And now your tire is kind of like flattened out. It's even, ready to roll again. I tested the 285 on 8.5-inch wheels. And with this car, I actually made it work. But all of the fuckery I had to go through to make it work, I had to deal with the PSI. I had to turn the traction control off. The traction control was screwing up the car because it couldn't tell what was going on. So when I was just going around turns on the highway, you could feel something like the car was kind of like doing this, like it was giving one wheel power, braking one wheel. I had to turn, and once I turned traction control off, it was smooth. Went right through a turn, no problem. Okay, so when you hit the traction off button, this is what you get. It shows you how this thing, I got light coming in. It shows you basically how that works. Like you can hit the traction button and that's what you get right there. And it tells you it's on now, then I'll turn it off. And it says that, man, this sunlight is killing it. So you've got to make sure that if you've got a type of car that's got traction control, yeah, those 285s are going to make a difference. I had to do, these cars are way too smart for that. I had to do all the driving. So once I got around the curve, I was like, okay, so it was a traction control issue. So I got my air PSI right. You had to find the sweet spot for your PSI for this car because of the weight and everything else. Had to find the sweet spot for the offset of the wheels and everything. You had to deal with the traction control. It's a lot of fuckery. It is not recommended for a reason because it is not safe. I shouldn't have to go through that much just to get these tires to fit on this car. And even now, I mean, I went up to like 90 miles an hour and it feels steady, but I'm still thinking in my head, these are like marshmallows on this car. Don't cheapskate your way through it. 285s do not belong on 8.5-inch wheels. Trust me. I'm going to probably get these wheels. I'm going to buy a set just like these, and I'm going to get them expanded out to 9.5-inch. A lot of people say, oh, well, 8.5-inch wheels can take on 275, can't go higher than 255 tires. Well, my 255s, I put them on the front, and they do just fine on 8-inch wheels. So I went 275 in the rear. 275s can fit. I can attest to that. 285s are not safe. They're just not safe. In my opinion, they're not. And maybe in your opinion, on your vehicle, the way your suspension is set up, maybe the way your traction control is set up, all that, you feel safe. I don't feel safe. I do not recommend in no way, shape, or form putting 285s on these wheels, on these 8.5s. I wouldn't do it, not for a BMW. I probably wouldn't do it for any car. But I learned over the past 4 days why. Nobody ever said why. Everybody just goes, well, it's recommended not to. Oh, you can't do that. It won't fit. It'll rub. It ain't going to rub. It don't rub. I even had people in the back. This thing don't rub. You could drive this car just like it is set up. I can go from here, clear down Southern Broadway, any street I want to take, and it'll feel like I'm driving this car. It'll feel just like this car. But the moment you get on the highway, it don't feel good. If you've got a performance car, it looks good, but you're taking out the functionality. You're taking out the performance aspect of this. This is not a show car. It should be able to perform like a performance car. Even with the 285s, if I take off with these 285s, it should perform. And I'll tell you right now, when I hit it now, as it's set up now in a straight line, when I hit it, oh, this thing goes. It'll grab, it'll take off. It's a lot of contact back there. It's way different than the 275s. The 275s grab and they go and they fast, but these are way faster and they grab a whole lot more, and to the point where it's almost like out of control back there. So now I see why I did. Like I said, Discount Tire won't do it. They didn't put this together. I had to put this together myself in my garage. But I see why. Because anybody else would have probably took off down the highway. See me, I like to test my stuff. Anybody else would have took off down the highway, probably wrecked their car 30 minutes after leaving Discount. Because it was that bad. Trust me. When I was over 80 miles an hour, that whole rear end was dancing. I mean, I had to double hand the steering wheel. It was like this. I was like, what the hell's wrong with this car? 285s don't go on 8.5s. It just don't. And now you know why.